Hello and welcome, dear viewers, to my YouTube channel. Today we will be discussing the opening soliloquy from Shakespeare's play Richard III. Now is the winter of our discontent. Now, before we go on to discuss the soliloquy itself, there are a few points that we need to keep in mind. The first is that Richard III constitutes a part of a tetralogy. Tetra means four, which means it is a set of four plays that are usually read or meant to be read together. Richard III concludes the tetralogy, whereas the previous three are Henry VI, Part 1, 2, and 3. Now, it is important to point out this fact for a particular reason, and it is that Shakespeare has chosen to highlight the physical deformity of his antagonist, Richard. So if we read Henry VI, Part 3, if we read the present soliloquy, we shall find that Shakespeare is exaggerating the physical deformity of Richard. The question arises that why does Shakespeare chooses to do so, where on the other hand historians have argued that Richard did suffer from a slight physical deformation, is that his one shoulder was slightly higher than the other. But other than that, he had no noticeable physical deformity. Obviously, the reason is that Shakespeare chooses to do so for justifying the inferiority complex that Richard feels on account of his physical appearance and to compare and contrast to create a dramatic effect. Now, it is a soliloquy. In the soliloquy, the word comes from the Latin solus and loqui. Solus means speech, alone, and loqui means speech. So it is usually when a character in a play or a drama is alone and he or she speaks out their thoughts aloud so that those sitting in the audience members, can listen in or drop into those thoughts. So soliloquy, in short, is a speech made by a character when he or she is alone on the stage, and they are essentially the thoughts that are going on in their mind. Let us now begin to analyze the soliloquy. Now is the winter of our discontent, made glorious summer by the son of York. What Shakespeare is doing in these two opening lines is he is linking seasonal change with political change. As seasons do not remain constant, seasons change, so too political fortunes rise and fall. And the House of York, that is the house to which Richard and his family belongs, have recently defeated the House of Lancaster, and now Richard's eldest brother, is the king. He has assumed the throne of England. So just a few days back, just a few weeks back, just a few months back, we were suffering from this political exile, the winter of discontent. And Richard now mockingly says a kind of a disingenuous praise that because of his eldest brother, the son of York, Shakespeare is obviously punning on the word son, the political fortunes have changed, the political fortunes have risen, and now they have assumed the leadership of England, or rather, his brother has assumed the leadership of England. And all the clouds that lard upon our house in the deep bosom of the ocean buried. Again, a sort of a disingenuous praise of his brother, that a very heroic act he has committed, that all the thunderstorms and the dangers that were looming upon our house, upon our family, he has taken them together and buried them deep in the ocean so that they will now no longer trouble them, or they no longer need to be afraid of them. Now are our brows bound with victorious wreaths. The indirect or unstated comparison is obviously with medical bandages, because during the time of war, soldiers and all usually when they get injured on the battlefield, on the battleground, their heads would be covered in bandages. But now that the war is over, now that the House of York has conclusively defeated the House of Lancaster, their brows are now bound with garlands and flowers and victorious wreaths. So we also note the alliteration, victorious, wreaths, brows bound. Our bruised arms hung up for monuments. Now the House of York is in no need of their swords and shields. Now those arms can be hung up for the present generation, for the generation to come, to view them, to admire them. Our stern alarms changed to merry meetings. Now earlier, when an sudden attack used to take place and there used to be sudden alarms to take arms to run to the battlefield, instead of that now they have changed to merry meetings. Again, fine alliteration, merry meetings. Our dreadful marches to delightful measures. And when army marches, it is a very disciplined sort of a march, but it is also awe inspiring. So their dreadful marches have now turned to delightful measures. Again, fine alliteration, dreadful marches, delightful measures. Grim visaged war hath smoothed his wrinkled front. Richard says that the war has come as a kind of a blessing for his brother, where earlier he appeared to grow old, had wrinkles coming across his face. Now, suddenly, because of the war, it seems as if he has turned younger. And now, instead of mounting barbed steeds to fright the souls of fearful adversaries, he capers nimbly in a lady's chamber to the lascivious pleasing of a lute. And now that the war is over, when he used to go out into the battlefield to fight, his horse that he used to ride was covered with these barbed wires, so that the enemy hesitates to attack him. Uh, the enemy fears going near to the king on the horse. Now, instead of such acts, he passes his time nimbly, having fun, enjoying in a lady's chamber to the music of a lute, to the fine sounds of musical instruments. Again, we have the alliteration, lascivious, pleasing, and lute. Now, Richard uh, changes the focus. Till here, he mentioned about his brother, about the changed fortunes of the House of York. Now, what is his situation in this changed and charged political environment? But I, that am not shaped for sportive tricks. Because of his physical deformity, he says that I am not able to have any fun. I am not able to enjoy any of this, nor made to court an amorous looking glass. I cannot go and even stand before a mirror that is a looking glass, because I am so ugly looking. I am so physically strange, that it is frightening even to stand before a mirror. I that am rudely stamped and want love's majesty. Shakespeare uses legal and financial terminology that fate has rudely stamped me, I who have never experienced love and its majesty, to strut before a wanton ambling nymph, that I also have this opportunity, this pleasure of going after, chasing after beautiful women. I that am curtailed of this fair proportion, something that should have been a part of my life too, something that should have been given to me as well in a fair amount. It has been curtailed, it has been prohibited, it has been removed, cheated of feature by dissembling nature. Nature has cheated me of this particular feature, of this particular sort of enjoyments, and I am deformed, unfinished, sent before my time into this breathing world, scarce half made up, and that so lamely and unfashionable that dogs bark at me as I halt by them. Richard says that I am deformed, I am unfinished, I was born, I came into this world before my time, sort of a premature birth. And we see that Shakespeare exaggerates the physical deformity, that even if I stand by dogs, beside dogs, dogs also bark at me. I am so lame and unfashionable. Why I, in this weak piping time of peace, have no delight to pass away the time during this time of peace. And Richard specifically points out that the time of peace is always weak, it is always fragile. Some small incident happens and all the peace is all the piece goes out of the window, and suddenly you are back on the battlefield, on the battleground. So during this week time of peace, I don't have any delight, I don't have anything to do, unless if I just look at my shadow in the sun and go on complaining about my deformity. And therefore, since I cannot prove a lover, that is, since I cannot love anybody, no one can love me, to entertain these fair, well spoken days, during this fair days, during these days of peace, I am determined to prove a villain. I have decided that because I cannot be good, I will be bad and hate the idle pleasures of these days. And I shall hate these idle pleasures, listening to music and chasing after beautiful women. Plots have I laid, inductions dangerous, by drunken prophecies, libels, and dreams, to set my brother Clarence and the king in deadly hate, the one against the other. And therefore I have come up with schemes, I have come up with plots whereby I shall make sure that my two elder brothers, that is the king and the second brother Clarence, they become sworn enemies of each other. And if King Edward be as true and just as I am subtle, false, and treacherous, this day should Clarence closely be viewed up about a prophecy which says that G of Edward's heirs the murderer shall be. And just as I am false, I am treacherous, I am never true, and King Edward if, is equally as true and just as I am not, he will make sure that today my second brother, that is Clarence, would be put up in a prison because a false prophecy has been made. Obviously, Richard would have been behind this prophecy that says that Clarence would be responsible for the death of Edward's heirs, that is, Edward's children's. And obviously, the king, fearing that his own brother plans to or is conspiring to kill his children, would surely put his brother behind bars. So, Richard is making sure that his two elder brothers turn sworn enemies of each other. Dive thoughts down to my soul. Here Clarence comes. The Duke of Clarence, the second brother, Richard, sees that he is approaching, he is coming towards him, and that is why he asks his thoughts, all of these thoughts that are going on in his mind, his hatred towards his brother, his complaints that I am physically strange, I do not have all the pleasures to enjoy that others do. All these anger and complaints that he is having on seeing that his brother Clarence is approaching, he is asking his thoughts to dive deep down into his souls where nobody can see them, and he will wear a facade of innocence and uh, helping nature. So, trying to attempt to reconcile the second brother with the king, with the eldest brother. And this is where the soliloquy concludes. I hope you enjoyed it. You enjoyed the discussion. Please do not forget to like, share, and subscribe. You can also drop in your comments, your suggestions into the comments box. You can also suggest future topics, future themes that we can take up for discussion. Once again, thank you. Thank you for joining. Thank you for viewing.